"Ladies and gentlemen," said George, "Harold and I have invented something that is guaranteed to keep you glued to your seats." "Yes," said Harold, "we call it glue." Mr. Crook became very angry. "You two did not invent glue," he shouted. He stood up to take the microphone away from Harold, and his chair stood up with him. Everyone in the gymnasium laughed. The school secretary, Miss Anthrop, stood up to remove Mr. Crook's chair from his pants. Her chair stood up with her, too. Everyone in the gymnasium laughed harder. The other teachers stood, and, you guessed it, they were stuck to their chairs as well. Everyone in the audience howled with laughter. One kid stood up to go to the bathroom, and his chair came with him also. The audience stopped laughing so hard. They all quickly checked to their chairs, and suddenly the laughter stopped completely. Everyone in the whole school was glued to their seats. You see, while it was true that George and Harold had not invented glue, they had invented a kind of glue. By simply mixing rubber cement with concentrated orange juice mix, they had created quick-drying, body heat-activated glue. They applied this special glue to every seat in the gymnasium except theirs early that morning. Everyone in the gymnasium was glaring at George and Harold and seething with anger. "I've got a good idea," said George. "What?" asked Harold. "Run!" cried George.
I'm awfully scared that everyone who knows me as I always am will discover that I have another side, a finer and better side. I'm afraid they'll laugh at me, think I'm ridiculous and sentimental, not take me seriously. I'm used to not being taken seriously. It's only the light-hearted Anne to take the stage for a quarter of an hour. She simply shrivels up as soon as she has to speak and lets Anne number one take over. And before I realize it, she has disappeared. Therefore, the nice Anne is never present in company, has not appeared one single time so far, but almost always predominates when we're alone. I know exactly how I'd like to be, how I am too, inside. But alas, I'm only like that for myself. And perhaps that's why, no, I'm sure it's the reason why I say I've got a happy nature within, and why other people think I've got a happy nature without. I am guided by the pure Anne within, but outside I'm nothing but a frolicsome little goat who's broken loose.
It took a while to get Ellie and Brenda pulled away from the front yard of the church. Jess and Leslie went ahead and put the little girls on the back and settled down to wait. "Gee, I'm really glad I came. Jess turned to Leslie in unbelief. "It was better than a movie." "You're kidding." "No, I'm not." And she wasn't. He could tell by her face. "The whole Jesus thing is really interesting, isn't it?" "What do you mean?" "All those people wanting to kill him when he hadn't done anything to hurt them," she hesitated. "It's really kind of a beautiful story, like Abraham Lincoln or Socrates or Aslan." "It ain't beautiful," Maybelle broke in. "It's scary, nailing holes right through somebody's hand." Maybelle's right. Jess reached down into the deepest pit of his mind. "It's because we're all vile sinners God made Jesus die." "Do you think that's true?" He was shocked. "It's in the Bible, Leslie."
Lolita, light of my life, fire of my loins, my sin, my soul, Lolita. The tip of the tongue taking a trip of 3 steps down the palate to tap at 3 on the teeth. Lolita. She was low, plain low in the morning, standing 4 feet 10 in one sock. She was Lola in slacks. She was Dolly at school. She was Dolores on the dotted line. But in my arms, she was always Lolita. Did she have a precursor? She did. Indeed she did. In point of fact, there might have been no Lolita at all had I not loved one summer a certain initial girl child.
To be a man watched by women, it must be entirely strange. To have them watching him all the time, to have them wondering, what's he going to do next? To have them flinch when he moves, even if it's a harmless enough move, to reach for an ashtray perhaps. To have them sizing him up. To have them thinking, he can't do it, he won't do. He'll have to do this last as if he were a garment, out of style or shoddy, which must nevertheless be put on because there's nothing else available. To have them putting him on, trying him out, while he himself puts them on like a sock over a foot, onto the stub of himself, his extra sensitive thumb, his tentacle, his delicate stalked slug's eye, which extrudes, expands, winces, and shrivels back into himself when touched wrongly, grows big again, bulging a little at the tip, traveling forward as if along a leaf, into them, avid for vision. To achieve vision in this way is journey into darkness, while he himself strains blindly forward. She watches him from within. We're all watching him. It's the one thing we can really do, and it is not for nothing. If he were to falter, fail, or die, what would become of us? No wonder he's like a boot, hard on the outside, giving shape to a pulp of a tenderfoot. That's a wish. I've been watching him for some time, and he's given no evidence of softness.
We were not a physically expressive family, to say the least, but once I was unaccountably moved to kiss my father goodnight. Having little practice with the gesture, all I managed was to grab his hands and bust the knuckles lightly, as if he were a bishop or an elegant lady, before rushing from the room in embarrassment. This embarrassment on my part was a tiny scale model of my father's more developed self-loathing. His shame inhabited our house as pervasively and invisibly as the aromatic must of aging mahogany. In fact, the meticulous period interiors were expressly designed to conceal it. Mirrors, distracting bronzes, multiple doorways, visitors often got lost upstairs. My mother must have bathed me hundreds of times, but it's my father rinsed me off with a purple metal cup that I remember most clearly. The suffusion of warmth as the hot water sluiced over me, the sudden unbearable cold of its absence. Was he a good father? I want to say at least stuck around, but of course he didn't. It's true that he didn't kill himself until I was nearly 20, but his absence resonated retroactively, echoing back through all the time I knew him.